May the Lord be with you. Me and my dad were in the old city of Jerusalem, walking along the streets, and we were with a man who worked at Bethlehem Bible College, and he grew up right in that old city, and he was giving us a tour and showing us the restaurants that were his favorite and feasting us on the wonderful food there. But before we got to the feasting, as we walked and talked and explored the area, it's quite warm. Me and my dad were beginning to get quite thirsty. And Ryan, my phone has failed me for the moment here, so could you throw up the first slide there? We came across a juice stand, and there was quite a number of these juice stands in existence here. This one, our guide, Jack, says, this is what you need. You have to have some of this right now. So we drank carrot juice. There's also an almond tamarind juice that is absolutely spectacular and instantly refreshing to have these juices as we were hot and walking around and struggling. But before we kind of got to the drinking of the juice, as we saw the stand, my dad kind of froze, just staring at this person and before him with these juices. And he froze, and then he had to tell us why. So as we got our juices and walked, he told us the story. When my dad was 17, he was hitchhiking in northern Tunisia, and he was completely dehydrated and feeling at the absolute end of his strength. And he was in a city, and one of the stall vendors called him over, sat him down on a chair, recognized what was happening to him. He didn't know he was so dehydrated. And the stall vendor sat him down and just plied him with juice and then made him sit there and then waited an hour or so and then gave him a bunch more juice until Gordon was healed and ready to step back out into the world. There are times in our life where we come across these spaces where we deeply need refreshing drinks. Sometimes you're just walking, enjoying the heat of the day, but at other times you're desperate for it and don't even know that you need it. Ryan, you can turn it back to the black screen. Right now we're in a sermon series looking at our life together and paying attention to how our temple learning from the fall all the way through Advent and through Lent has brought us to the place wondering, how does the church operate together in this idea of temple? And what does it mean for us? And as today, we look at this text from Ezekiel and from Revelation, we're trying to understand what does it mean for us as the church in this time. The temple in the Old Testament was a place of communal living, where the presence of God was present. The formation of the identity of those people who lived in and around that temple, participating in the life of the temple, their lives deeply interwoven with each other. They were in relationship with God and with each other, constantly seeking to be in right relationship, centered around the temple. Then Jesus comes and he redefines this community and centers it around himself. He says, "Tear down this temple and I will rebuild it in 3 days." And he meant his very body. And then he invites us to come into that reality of his being the temple. And he says, "In my Father's house there are many rooms, and I am making room for you." In that temple, the place of God's presence, there's room specifically for you, a unique and special space that you are invited into to participate in the life and presence of Jesus Christ, living out what it means to be in right relationship with God and in right relationship with your neighbor. Paul picks up on this in the New Testament, saying, "Do you not know that you are the holy temple?" And the Greek New Testament invites us into the mystic reality that together we are, as the church, the temple of God. So we're going to look at these visions, the vision of Ezekiel and the vision of Revelation chapter 22, where the temple is a place out of which comes the refreshing water for the whole earth, the creatures, the fish, the animals, the trees, and the healing of the nations. In the time that we find ourselves, in this post-ish, pandemic-ish sort of a time, many of us are feeling tired. We're feeling a scarcity of time, a scarcity of energy, a scarcity of commitment and motivation. I think what we need is refreshment. And so this text came to me, and I want to share it with you and invite all of us to participate in what the reality that this text invites us into. So we're going to talk about giving and refreshment in hospitality. The first person, and I would call her to the stand, as it were, the first person I would like to bring to you as a witness to the state of affairs, if you will, is Karis Coolsmith, my daughter. I said to Karis one time, okay, I would like you to do the dishes. Unload the dishwasher, unload the sink strainer, and then reload the dishes after scraping all the scraps into the garbage, please and thank you. So lo and behold, I go away a little bit, come back, and the job is done. Wonderful. Thanks, Karis. And then there's this grunt. I know that grunt, I think, and it means, don't thank me for something that you made me do. Fast forward weeks, maybe a month, and I came and I found the kitchen clean. I knew it was an absolute disaster earlier that day, and I came in late in the afternoon and the kitchen is spotless. It looks wonderful. Some cleaning fairy has come through, and then I have some conversations. Turns out it was Karis. Without having been asked, she cleaned all the dishes. She washed the ones by hand that needed it, cleaned the counters. She put away the blender with all its attachments from the morning. She wiped down the kitchen island, and she took the overflowing cups and cardboard boxes and containers that were falling out of the recycling, and she took them all down to the garage. Thanks, Karis. This cleanup looks amazing. No grunt. This time, she smiles back and skips off down the stairs. Karis once revealed to me a deep truth, that when we are told to do something, there's almost an instinctual urge in a human being to not do it. We really like our personal sovereignty. When you do it without having been asked, you actually come away refreshed. Your gift to someone else, your action, your service, your work, when you do it without having been asked, you actually come away feeling lighter, feeling refreshed yourself. Who among us don't know this reality? Feeling refreshed for actually having done service to somebody else. And they're saying thank you, and you're like, yeah, it was easy. Felt good to do it. As though gravity for a moment seemed to hold you down a little less. It probably starts when we're a teenager. But we kind of get stuck on this idea that when someone tells us to do it, there's this little grumble in our throat. But it's actually a false front. It's a false experience that you have that you do not need to be limited by. What if, more important than whether or not you were the initiator of the action, is whether or not you were listening to Jesus? When someone tells you to do something, and that someone could even be yourself, can you hear the voice of Jesus Christ behind that voice? So when you hear, you ought to be doing this, does it sound like yourself putting some sort of pressure or expectation on you? Or is it your mother putting pressure or expectation on you? Or do you hear the voice of your Lord speaking behind that, speaking behind your thoughts even? The key that I'm learning is that it's important to listen to the tone, not the tone of the person, but the tone of what you hear behind, underneath. Last Sunday, as we reflected on the idea of unity, we paid attention to remembering division, seeing the division that's a reality in our world right now. Division that is a fruit of our desires to draw borders and lines, of our desire to make walls, to keep us safe, to keep us the same, the way we like things, to keep us, us. Drawing boundaries using declarations and sheets of paper, declarations about who we are to make sure that everybody knows who we are. Drawing borders of identity, drawing borders of purity, who's in and who's out, so that we can maintain this sense of who we are. Does that desire for security bring us authentic refreshment? Do we feel refreshed as we reinforce those borders? Or is it a false sense of refreshment? Hospitality when it's focused on our in-group. We, us, they are outside. We are inside. We tend to easily be hospitable to those who are like us. What's the tone that's at play in this kind of hospitality? Sometimes when we see the needs of others, we get worried thinking about scarcity, thinking that, maybe I don't have enough to be able to share with them and with others and to care for myself. Perhaps we see insurmountable objects. We see the way the world is. We see the mountains of darkness and the idea of peace or the idea of harmony in people right now seems so out of reach. Does even the small things I do matter? I think it's in those spaces where maybe we're feeling like we need to give up or that we don't have the motivation to continue in these acts of refreshment towards others, that we hear this text, that we pay attention to this vision, that we let it speak to us. In Ezekiel 47, this river pouring out from the temple, and it seems in the text like it's coming from under the temple, under the altar, where the rock would be, reminding us immediately of the rock in the wilderness that the Israelites came across that Moses struck while God was upon the rock. Strike this rock that I'm on, strike me, and the water will pour out. And so now the water is coming out of the temple in Ezekiel's vision, and he sees the water come out, and it spreads out to the Dead Sea, where the stagnant water is. And then the water becomes alive, and the fish are there. And there's people fishing beside the sea. Perhaps you've seen this here in the valley or along the coast somewhere. Early in the morning, if you head out there, there's a bunch of people that will line up. I saw it also in Steveston. If you go down to the south end of Richmond, southwest corner, there's people that will go out to the edge of the water. They'll just line up stacks of people. And then I saw it again on the Sea of Galilee. 5 a.m. in the morning, people are out. They want to go fishing. They're lining up because there's life. It's enjoyable. It's fun. This vision is a vision of refreshment for all the places. It's metaphorical. It's a vision for all the refreshment that comes to the dead places in our own hearts and lives, to the dead places in our societies and our institutions, to the dead places in our nations and in our world. And people will line up to participate in the life. And then the trees will bear fruit, not in season and out of season. The trees will bear fruit at all times, good fruit. And then in Revelation 22, the angel shows me a river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and from the Lamb, through the middle of the street of the city. There's no temple in the vision in Revelation. It's remarkably absent. You would think, okay, people of God, they're going to come together around God, and all the nations are going to want to come and participate in this. There should be a temple here, but it's not. It's remarkably absent from the vision that John sees in Revelation. There is no temple. The people of God are gathered around the presence of Jesus Christ, and that is the temple. This is what John sees. And through the middle of the street of the city, on either side of the river, is tree of life and its 12 kinds of fruit, producing its fruit each month, and the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. John sees that when all things will be well, God is going to refresh the whole earth, and all the nations will come around and be healed of all the brokenness and division, the lack of harmony, the violence. This will all be healed. Every tear will be wiped away. John sees this vision. Looking at the Gospel of John, in Gospel of John chapter 7, verses 37 to 39, there's a remarkable story where Jesus comes to a festival, and it's the festival where the people are remembering the rock that was split where the water poured out. And Jesus, in the middle of that festival, he stands up and he says, "Come to me, all you who are thirsty." You're all thirsty. "Come to me, everyone who's thirsty, and drink. And the one who believes in me, out of the center of them will come streams of living water." So we have this vision in Ezekiel of what the Messiah is going to bring, of what goodness is going to look like. And we see that picked up again in the book of Revelation. This is what the end times look like. This is what we're longing for and what Jesus will bring. And then Jesus tells us, you can have that now. In Christianity, we call this the already not yet. Those end time visions are true. They're true of what is going to happen when God makes all things well. But for now, God has made it so that we will continue to live in a sinful, fallen, and broken world. And yet, the streams of living water can flow, and you can participate in them. You can participate in being refreshed and in refreshing. The refreshing that comes from the very temple of God that Jesus Christ invites us to enter into and to participate in right now. Yes, it doesn't mean that all things are going to be well right now. But you can participate in this stream right now. Jesus invites you into it. All those who come, all those who drink, and all those who believe, out of them, out of their center, will come streams of living water. In our lives, it's so easy to get caught up in all the things that we're doing. What are you busy doing? Building a career, saving up for a house, saving up for, working on. We're all doing things, busy at them, busy. All the things around us shall pass. Jesus looks at the stones of the temple with his disciples, and the disciples are like, this is amazing, look at this temple, look at all the stones. And Jesus says, yeah, they're all going to be torn down. This too shall pass. And there's deserts and mountains, streams and valleys. And in Mary's song, she talks about how all the high places are made low and the low places are raised up. All the busy work that we're busy on about right now, the mountains that are around us are going to be here much longer after all of our busy work is dust. And at some point, the mountains will erode and change and become different shapes and maybe become flat where they used to be high. And the water will rise or the water will lower. All this too shall pass. Recessions and wars, famines and feasts. These are all present in our life right now, and they too shall pass. But you have the opportunity to participate in things that do not pass, to participate in the eternal streams of living water. What Jesus Christ is inviting us into is to participate in this vision that Ezekiel has of the future that's breaking into the present moment right now. You're participating in eternity when you participate in that. This is a different tone. This is a different tone than the other ways and means in which we can do a service for somebody, offer them refreshment. Could it be that we pay attention to this vision from Ezekiel, that we reflect on it, pray into it, use it as the way of reminding ourselves that, I need to show up here and participate in this, and I don't really want to, but I'm going to go to it because I'm participating in that stream of living water. My faith, my presence as a Christian, is participating in the life of Jesus Christ, out of which the stream of living water, the Holy Spirit, moves through me and in me, and so I'm going to participate in that as a way and means of this living water spreading out to others and offer them refreshment. When you think of, I should probably do that, ask yourself if the tone behind that request comes with this vision. Does it echo this vision? Does it resonate with this vision? You will have people ask of you things that you need to say no to, for sure. Listen for the tone behind it, underneath those words. Does the tone resonate with this vision? Jesus tells us that if you give a cup of cold water in my name to even the least of these, you're participating in the work that I'm doing, and you will participate in what that brings us, which is refreshment. That idea of doing refreshment where you will be refreshed. Listen to the tone, and you get to enter into the stream of living water. I think for the context we're in, the timing of where things are right now, and the context that we're in on the island, in the Comox Valley, how does that look for us? What does it mean to give refreshment to others in this time and in this place? And as I reflected on that, I think many of you can answer this question better than I can. So take some time and think about it. Share with one another. What does refreshment look like to my neighbor today? And I've been wondering about this, and I wonder if participation and commitment aren't a significant way of showing refreshment to others right now. You show up, and you commit to showing up. That does immeasurable amount of refreshment to people. I know with my baseball team, just showing up is a way of refreshing others, that you're present, that you're there, that you want to be with them. Small things like a card or a phone call, these are ways that we can refresh one another. And I encourage you over this week to think of the different ways that you can give refreshment to your neighbors, to those around you, to your workmates, to those present in the community. And God will provide you with opportunities, little nudges that say, here, I think, Micah, you need to give refreshment to this person here. And as often as not, it's small and simple, and it provides this refreshment. And if I listen to the tone, and if I enter into the tone of this vision, I know that I get to experience refreshment at the very same time as I get to participate in giving refreshment, because Jesus has invited me into his life and his desire to refresh the world and to heal the nations. So may you get to spend time in that reality this week. Amen.